You're 6 years old. You drop a glass. It shatters. You freeze. Not because of the sound, but because of what comes next. A voice, sharp, controlled. Not loud, but precise. Look what you've done. And in that moment, something small happens inside your brain. Not fear of the glass, fear of being wrong. Now, fast forward. You're older, maybe much older, and you still apologize too quickly. Still explain yourself when no one asked. Still feel guilty for things that aren't entirely your fault, and you don't know why. Because the most powerful psychological conditioning you will ever experience didn't come from strangers. It came from family. And that's what makes it dangerous. We're told family is safe, supportive, protective, honest, and sometimes it is. But here's the uncomfortable part. Family is also the first place you learn manipulation. Not always intentionally, not always maliciously, but consistently. Because family has access no one else does. They see you before you build defenses, before you develop identity, before you even understand what normal feels like. Which means they don't just influence your behavior, they shape your perception of reality. Let's break this down. A child doesn't question patterns. They absorb them.
They absorb them. If love comes with conditions, they assume love is conditional. If approval comes after sacrifice, they assume approval must be earned. If silence follows honesty, they assume truth is dangerous. No one sits them down and explains this. It happens quietly, repeatedly, over years. And by the time they notice, it feels like personality. Here's where it gets darker. In psychology, there's a concept called intermittent reinforcement. It's simple. Reward someone unpredictably, and they become more attached. Casinos use it, social media uses it, and sometimes families use it without realizing. One day, warmth. Next day, distance. One moment, praise. Next moment, criticism. No clear pattern, no stable baseline. So the brain starts chasing the good version of the person, trying to figure out what triggers it, trying to earn it. And that's how emotional dependence forms. Not from constant kindness, but from inconsistent kindness. Now add hierarchy. In most families, there's an unspoken structure. Who speaks? Who listens? Who decides what's right? And once that hierarchy is established early, it rarely gets questioned later, even when it should. So when a family member says something that feels wrong, you hesitate. Not because you agree, but because your brain has already assigned them authority. And authority changes perception.
So what looks like concern can sometimes be control. What sounds like advice can sometimes be limitation. Why are you acting different? You've changed. This isn't like you. But maybe it is. Maybe it's the first time it actually is. Now, zoom out. Why does this matter? Because these early patterns don't stay in the family. They leak into friendships, into work, into relationships. You tolerate what feels familiar, not what's healthy. You respond to emotional cues you were trained to recognize, not necessarily the ones that are actually there. And most of the time, you don't even realize you're repeating the script. Here's something even more uncomfortable. Not all manipulation feels aggressive. Some of it feels soft. Guilt, silence,
disappointment. No shouting, no threats, just a subtle shift in tone. A pause that lasts a little too long. A look that says more than words. And suddenly, you adjust your behavior. Not because you were told to, but because you learned how to read the room. That's advanced conditioning, and it's incredibly effective. But here's the part people don't like to hear. Most of this isn't intentional. Families aren't secret masterminds. They're patterns, repeating patterns. People who were shaping others the same way. Which makes it harder to detect, because there's no clear villain, just a system that keeps running. So, what happens when you finally notice? Nothing dramatic. No instant clarity. Just small moments where something feels off. A reaction that seems too strong. A guilt that seems misplaced. A dynamic that doesn't make sense anymore. And for the first time, you question it. Not loudly. Quietly. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And that creates a different kind of tension. Not between you and them, but between who you were trained to be and who you're starting to become. And here's the question that stays with you. If the way you think, react, and relate to people was shaped long before you understood it, then how much of it is actually yours? And how much of it is something you were simply taught to believe?